When we arrived, it was dark and it was raining. And it wasn't very warm either, but I opened the door. I stood there. I didn't see a mountain, but it was like those arms just embraced me. It was an embrace. But the next morning when we came out, it was there in all its glory. I was born in Berlin in 1940. My daddy wanted to have a girl so badly, and then after the third boy, it finally happened. So I was very, very welcomed. And then there was a war, and my dad had to go to war. And then came another little boy during the worst time in Germany. So now it became a time where the little girl was like, "You're nothing special." So I experienced a lot of violence from my brothers because they didn't have enough to eat. And I got too much attention. And it was not until the little one was born when I was put a little bit to the side. So that alone creates a dynamic that, looking back, I understand a lot.
My mother was a beautician, and they would have those shows, you know, hair shows. And so this is her over here. My mother had a beauty shop, and my father had a barber shop, okay? They had worked hard for that.
This is in Germany?
In Germany, in Frankfurt. It was really great growing up, you know, and the war didn't start, you know, the bad stuff with the war didn't start till a little bit later. So my father one day was called out with another friend of his and a whole bunch of other guys, and they had told him to line up, and they said, "Why?" And they said, they gave him a gun, and they said, "Oh, we have some guys here that are criminals, they have to be shot." Well, my father recognized one of his customers, Jewish, and he wasn't going to do it. Well, they were going to shoot him. He and my other friend, they managed to escape. We didn't hear from my father for almost a year. He had left, you know, pretty much the country.
Then this time started where we had to go to the basements, and I became a very stubborn little girl. I did not want to be woken up in the middle of the night. It's like, I didn't understand. I was 3-4 years old.
The bombing came along, and it was really bad. I mean, it was, things destroyed. Our building was 5 stories high, 3 apartments on each floor going around the corner, and 4 stores. You know, this is how big, and they all went very high. And had no elevators, you know, we walked. Yeah. And this all was just completely destroyed, you know, and stuff. And we had cellars to go into, not bunkers, but just cellars. Well, the big bombing, like my father wasn't around. My mother and my brother were in the one section of the cellar, and I was over here. I was always the nosy one. I wanted to see some of the planes fighting each other. You know, they had the lights on them. I wanted to see what the bombing going on. But that was my downfall, because then when the building collapsed and stuff, I was caught with 2 dead people and 1 live person on the other side of the cellar. Not where my mother and them was. We were buried for, well, if you count hours, it was close to 50 hours. It was 2.5 days before they could dig us out, but there was enough of an air little hole. At first I thought it was very adventurous, you know. Little did I know. But we were alive, you know, everything was gone. And like my mother said, it's just stuff.
When children are hungry, they are very egotistical. They haven't learned the bigger picture yet. And so my childhood, until my mother died, then it got, you know, all the way bad. Well, she got very, very ill when we escaped from the Russians in a horse carriage in the middle of winter. And it was the last carriage. And I tell you, that last carriage was so on my mind that when I was older, I would always run to the last bus.
And my mother's mother had gotten, she had 13 children, her and my grandfather. Only 3 lived to grow up because 5 of the sons were killed in the First World War. And then the typhoid took. So there was my mother and 2 brothers left. That was all. That grew up to be adults.
So yeah, that was a really, really terrible journey. I think it was January, ice cold. My mother would feed the little baby that wasn't even a year old. And she fell asleep. She was so exhausted. But in that moment where she was asleep, the little boy slid out of that carriage. And my mouth opened and my brothers looked at me like, so I froze. I froze so that I forgot. And literally it was like, I was so scared. And I didn't remember until about 20 years ago. So the little boy fell in a ditch.
We went and moved in with my grandparents, my mother's side, on the other end of town. Well, that got bombed, and my grandfather was a Prussian German who didn't believe those Americans and English are not going to kill me. And we watched him burn to death. He wouldn't come down the cellar.
And then my father came home from the war, but he was very, very badly injured. So we stayed in different homes and in a what is it, Waisenhaus, where children that don't have parents. Orphanage. Yeah, 2 of my brothers went to an orphanage. So that little boy, to go back to that, my youngest little brother was found by a couple that could not have children. They heard that little baby cry and they were on the way to escape from the Russians as well, but they walked to some place and found that little boy, took him in, so he grew up with those parents and had the best life of all of us.
Well, the end of 43 it started, that toward all the way through 44. You would get once a week a small little piece of meat, and that's all you would get, and you made lots of gravy, and then you would have potatoes and gravy, you know, the next day, or save a little bit more gravy. Otherwise, sometimes we had like potatoes and salt, you know. Then we found out we could get to a butcher shop, the horse meat. We've had horse meat. We could get some of that.
Horse meat's pretty good,
Actually, you know, if you cook it the right way, well, the urine goes through the system, so you have to cook it. It's like cooking kidneys, you know. Then you have a strong taste. Hey, with food, what the heck, you know.
In war times, people change. When there's not enough food and a lot of grief and, you know, not a lot of things to get distracted with, there come different things arise. Yeah, that was about the only thing after the war that we would get on our bread in the morning. It was like not even butter. It was just this sugar beet syrup.
When I was born, I weighed 7 pounds, but I went down to 2 pounds. Couldn't keep any food in it. And now you can't keep food away from me. Okay, I'm on a diet for the rest of my life.
I learned early on that food was like gold in bad times. And that brought me to that point where I did not want to depend on it. And I think it created where whenever I got upset, I just wouldn't eat, later on in life. And it wasn't all that bad because I kept my figure. It's a very important thing to always find the humor in our life situations, right? They found each other.
We still had fun, even though the bombings went on. In between bombings, we still played, we still had fun. Between our place and 2 blocks away, there was this little cemetery. It was a Jewish cemetery. In order, you have to kind of shortcut, go through the cemetery. Well, my grandmother worked in there for a while, helping to clean the dead, and stuff. And we used to go there in the evening, and because they had these metal things sitting there, and used to go ooh to the people, trying to scare the people. The crazy things I did.
In Berlin, when I was brought back to Berlin, I played literally in the houses that had fallen. The rebels was my playground. Didn't think anything about it. That was playground for children.
This is what you do through a war, you still have the times. And it didn't seem all that bad at the time, till we school kids would have to help a day after bombing to pull out bodies or parts of bodies, and you were exposed to that, which is actually, some people go, oh, that's gruesome to do to a child. And I said, no, it actually teaches you something. Oh my God, Yeah, but when my father got his last furlough home in late '44, he took us deep into the country, because there weren't bombing going on back there and stuff. And by train, it would have taken maybe 4 hours. It took 2 days, because all of us refugees were called by then, on the trains. Well, there was also troops on there, and so then the Americans would come and shoot, machine gun, and stuff, and they would fight back. We would have to run out of the train, and my sister was 4 months old at the time, and into foxholes, and stuff, and you would see people getting caught. We made it to the farms. Wonderful life. I got to milk cows, herd cows. I got to help slaughter, and stuff. I got to hold the pigs to drain the blood for bloodwurst, and stuff. We would get up at 5 in the morning. My brother was 4 years older than I am, was the farmer, go work with them, and I got to herd cows. It was wonderful. You see, my father came home, took us to the farm, went back, got killed January 18th in Russia, 1945, 2 months before the war ended. I guess the bazooka went off accidentally, killed my father and some of the others around. Wasn't even killed by the enemy,
Telling me that my mother went to heaven and God is going to make her healthy. Of course I waited for her to come back, and I figured God is a doctor, right? Wouldn't you think? God is a nice doctor. He sends my mother back when she is healthy. Well, I waited and waited, and she didn't come back. And when I said something to the adults, they found that funny. I did not. And that was what got me to not want to have anything to do with God. You leave me alone. You didn't send my mother back.
But in those days, it was that thing, you do something wrong, he's going to get you. So there was always that black cloud up there, and I used to say, I will never pay any attention to this, whatever that black cloud, that God that is up there, you know, and then whatever I do, totally different story. I'm very, very much, I take communion to people, and I'm, you know, I had more priests and bishops staying at my house for dinner than I've known anybody, and that they loved my food.
And then I got ill again and again and again, so I got confronted with a God doctor over and over and over again. I mean, my blood pressure was so low that when I would sit or stand in the bus, I would faint, and when I came back to consciousness, I was sitting. And I had gotten so used to it. In front of the mirror, I would do my hair, and I would faint and come back a few minutes later. So it was like, you know, other people need to drink. I needed to faint.
I never made it. I never got to go to high school. My brother did. I never made it to that part, only because then you started to have to pay. And every time our school burned down, we had to go a few miles further, you know, to another school. Let him answered. And now Ingborn Chansky, Manchesky, I don't know. It's express script. Joe, take the phone. By now I'm a little bit older. Now I'm 18, you know, and going on 19. The colonel's wife decided to have a dance and luncheon and dance for all the single girls and all the single men officers on the very much close to the end of the dance comes in this guy in uniform, and he looks, and it was all this long table, and it was the snacks, you know, the food on the table, and he kind of took the food and take it down to the other side, and he said, if everybody's still hungry, I've got the food down here. And I thought, oh, what kind of pig is this, you know, and stuff. And then it was it. Let me turn this on. This is my craft room also, guest room, and I make cards for people, whatever their personalities, so I make some cards and stuff, and this is my little cat wall. Every time I see a little thing of a cat, I put it up. I don't know. Now come here, look at wedding pictures. These are all wedding pictures. Now here's Joe and I. There's my mother and father. See, his grandfather was married 5 times. Wow. All the wives died. Some of them in childbirth. This is another brother of Joe's. These are all mostly Joe's family.
Now, where was it? Here? And this is my first fiancé, Mr. Kaufmann. He was a spy. When he left, about 4 weeks later, I found out I was pregnant.
Does your son know him at all?
No, never met him.
Wow.
I must have been 25, 26. That was doing, you know, I started acting school late. Well, that was a rig. Yeah, I must say I like it too.
What's a Manasa name?
Anand Manasa I got in India when I visited Osho. I had discovered Osho when I was still in the Black Forest. And I saw that, wow, this face and everything he said was like, wow, I need to meet that man. And I never planned to become a disciple, but I had to. I needed to be close and experience him closely. And he had the most wonderful message for me when I got initiated. He said, sometimes we have to go through so much pain that we think pain is needed. And just as I was experiencing all the pain of my childhood and youth, it's like that wave broke and joy was next wave. And that's what my life is really, 42 years. I died in Germany and came back and went to heaven. And that's Mount Shasta. Kundalini meditation is Omanasa. 15 minutes. 15 minutes to a beautiful music.